Thank you all for staying through the full Halifax Security Forum. Part of the question is, do we have what it takes for democracies to decide destiny? And I think what we saw, Peter, it was brilliant to start this closing session with the 15 by 15 to see the intergenerational power that comes from unleashing those with the freedom to create and free societies. We don't know which problems you're going to solve. We don't know what you're going to create. But it is how we harness our own people, their potential to shape destiny. But we also do it in a way that you're going to see through this panel. That democracies have to be serious about their security and defense, and they have to be curious about how we unleash the potential of our people and engage civilians in this cause as well. So I'm Damon Wilson. I'm the president of the National Endowment for Democracy. And we have the honor of supporting brave freedom fighters in a peaceful way around the world. I really want to start this panel by acknowledging that Halifax has done something special. Democracy has always been a guiding principle for the debates here in Halifax. That's why many of you come back. But this year, democracy is the agenda. And it's the agenda of an organization that brings you together not just to listen to these conversations, but to put you to work and understanding that the whole purpose of this is how do democracies work together to solve problems? How do we enhance strategic cooperation among today's world's democracies? And that takes our official leaders, our military commanders, and it takes those who are elected officials and those who are active and mobilized of our citizens in our private sector. Democracy works. Democracy has shaped destiny. We, those on the older side of the spectrum here, have the experience of having seen that paid off in the 20th century, having seen how, facing defeat, democracies rallied, World War I, World War II, the Cold War, shaping the future. Many of us then felt the optimism of what was really the development of a third democratic wave of freedom globally. But you, our 15 at 15, we now are living in a different era. It's not just 2 decades of a democratic recession. It's 2 decades of an authoritarian assault on fundamental freedoms and democracy. And that's what we're going to try to unpack here, that as Peter wrote in the opening letter for this forum, each generation will often hear from tyrants, from populists that offer a better way, a better alternative to democracy. It is never the truth. And as Maria Ressa wrote in the cover introduction for this final discussion, if we don't have those facts and the truth to understand that democracy is not perfect, yet self-correcting, it is better than all the alternatives. If we can't accept that truth ourselves, we're going to have trouble ensuring that our nations, our free nations, the free world shapes destiny, decides destiny. So that's the conversation we're going to have here today about the connection between our security, our defense, and the cause of our own democracy, and the support and the advance of freedom and keeping us secure. And to do that, we've got an extraordinary panel that brings together our military and civilian voices. Admiral Giuseppe Cavo Dragone, who is the chairman of the NATO military commander, the former chief of defense of Italy, has joined us, along with my colleague, Dr. Tamara Cofman Wittes, the president of the National Democratic Institute, one of the core institutes that the NED has the joy of supporting around the world. Leslie Orbitz, who is an incredibly motivated and motivating political actor, civic leader in Ukraine, who is a former member of parliament and the founder of the Price of Freedom, advocating for air defense in Ukraine. And finally, General Seán Clancy. It's a real honor to have the EU Military Committee Chair along with us, to have the first Irish general in that position in the European Union. So I want to kick off our conversation by coming back to how we think about recognizing that our security and defense of democracies and our work in supporting and advancing democracies are intertwined. They're mutually reinforcing. And maybe I could start with our military commanders first to talk a little bit about how you are taking steps now in this really different era to ensure the defense of our democracies and the European Union, the member states of the European Union, of the NATO allies, and defending freedom when the challenges that you are charged with defending our societies against are coming in many different forms, many that were not originally thought of as the purview of military commanders. Can you please kick us off, sir?
I will, of course, Damon. Thank you. Good morning, or is it good afternoon at this stage to everybody? Thank you. And can I just say at the outset, congratulations to all of you to be here at the very end. Yep. You know, it's a testament to your endurance and your resilience, but I think it's also a reflection of the hugely significant importance of the Halifax and actually the teams that have gone right through it that has kept people engaged throughout. So thank you all for that. Your question is, I think, very valid, and it covers so much. I think it comes down to three pillars. It's about actually renewing our resilience and what that means. It's about reinforcing our capabilities, and it's in reinforcing our unity, more importantly, because I think when we look at the theme of democracies heading towards our destiny, we're under an incredible stress test right now as a democracies. We have come from a bipolar world momentarily into a unipolar world, and now we're in a multipolar, contested world and an environment where we see also a kind of a backsliding in democracy internally, which is causing increased levels of polarization. So I suppose that's the context, the way we look at it, and how has that actually come to fruition then is that our rivals and others, they will take advantage of the fractions that come out of that. And they will use digital manipulation, influence operations, and of course, strategically then, they will try to interfere or intimidate. And this is the context, I guess, that the military response combined with the civil response and the civil military society is coming more and more to the fore. And this is not something new. Everyone in the military uniform here will recognize Clausewitz's triangle. The people, the government, and the military. That's 200 years old. And from a European point of view, it's going back to basics. And this is what the White Paper on Defence, it's what the Preparedness Union strategy and the roadmap that has come thereafter. It's focusing on civil and military society. It's focusing on resilience, readiness, and preparedness. Because the world today is borderless when it comes to the hybrid activities that we see and how they're manifesting and how they're impacting on us all every day. Yes, the battleground that we are all focused on and has been a lot over this few days has been in Ukraine. This is the physical battleground. But the strategic intimidation is global. But more importantly, it's and significantly felt in Europe right now. And we're responding to that. And we see it manifest in many, many ways in our freedom of our airspace, in our freedom of our seas, and how that has interfered with. And it's the responses around these manipulations. And we see it in electoral bases. I mean, we can identify directly with arson attacks, for instance, in Poland, in Lithuania, in Germany, directly associated with Russia. We can look at Romania in terms of the electoral process and the interference with it. When social media and influencers and paid influencers have been used to manipulate a pro-Russian campaign. During that particular election, there was 85,000 direct interferences in terms of DOS. That's denial of services in terms of against the electoral authority on a pro-Russian backed campaign. So these are the ways in which the strategic interference, intimidation, and it blurs the lines between coercive attack and physical attack, and it blurs the lines between conflict and peace. And I think that's why Mark Rutte would have said, for instance, that Europe is not at war, but neither is it at peace. True. And the response from Europe and the member states in particular, my role as the military committee chair is to bring together a cohesion on the 27 EU member states in terms of their activity at a military level, but recognition of the bridging between the civil and military in terms of their collective effort in response to all of these nefarious issues that are arising right across Europe and the globe right now. And we're developing, we're responding to what political EU have done in terms of reactionary peace around the preparedness union strategy and how, as we say, put meat on the bone for this. And therefore, the acceptance of this current environment, as I said, in terms of this multipolar environment, is something we all have to recognize. And I think this is the fundamental piece, and it's a whole of society that it starts with and finishes with.
Thank you, General Clancy. General Clancy, Europe is neither at war nor at peace. You have brought up the issues that are challenging that peace, that are really the domain of what Leslie and Tamara are working on. So I want to pull out that strand on that integration. But first, let me come to Admiral Cavo Dragone. Much of what General Clancy put on the table were often seen as almost beyond the remit of military planners. And yet the challenges that NATO allies are facing, from drone UAVs and drones to the border incursions to random acts of arson that are not so random. How is this shaping the thinking for you, Admiral, at NATO headquarters, of thinking about the defense of freedom for the allies and doing that in a way that's different now in cooperation with the European Union?
I was wondering that when you speak as a second, 30% of your idea are already blown. So. But of course, I agree on what Seán just said. We have so many points in common with the alliance and the European Union. From our perspective, I mean, face these new events and all the threats that shows up recently demanded that we had to continuously review and adapt our plans, our posture, and what we need to cope with the threat, which has been set back in 2022. But again, even if it is the same threat, which is Russia and the global terrorism, they are changing the way they are approaching us, the way they are posing themselves, for example, in the Ukrainian theater, and we need really to understand, to get any kind of insight to adapt our reaction, our readiness, and on and on. The thing that I can tell you, and this is a process we are really pursuing badly, is, like Seán anticipated, try to transfer our reaction or our way of acting to the whole of society, because really it is something now. Security, now democracy, now freedom is not anymore just a matter for military. It's no more. We need to get everybody involved. Sometimes we are not even the principal reactor. Sometimes we are not in charge of it, or we are not able to do something. And now, for this reason, we need to get everybody on board. How can we do this? I mean, involving the civil society from the very beginning of our actions, from planning, to exercising, spending, defining what are our needs, and that's something that we probably need to increase, need to foster, because too many times we have been accustomed or spoiled in having the burden or the responsibility of this freedom, security, and democracy on our area, and that's not feasible anymore. So this is something that we really need to improve, and we are on a way on doing that. Just sharing this with of course all the allies and all the like-minded and partnership partners. The big issue, again, just to face this today's situation, is just try to tell our public opinions what we are doing, transparency, with clarity. We don't have anything to hide, of course. It is something back in the past, probably, even if it was the case at the time. Just consider that we are spending $2.7 trillion in defense, and more than 50% is from the NATO countries. So it is fair that one morning a teacher or a doctor or a nurse wake up and tell us, why do we have to buy a new defense system and not a new hospital? And that's fair, but we need to tell them that, I mean, defense is not antithetic or is not in contrast with the human welfare. It's just part of it, and sometimes it is the base or the prerequisite of our way of living. And I mean, missile child is a school child too, and we can see that from Ukraine. A grid, a resilient grid, is giving light to hospital emergency room, has to the command and control post in our defense system. If we can spread this message, write this message, and I think that our public opinion can reach and can be part of our future decision, just sharing what we are doing, which is something that is, I mean, from the common safety. And if the democracies are really shaping destiny, NATO's job is pretty clear. We have to be sure. I mean, if our citizens decide to stay together, we need to be sure that we have the tools, the system, the means, the coherence, and the courage to transfer this choice into real deterrence and strong security.
Thank you, Admiral. So we've just had the Admiral basically say that the work of these two women is as essential to our defense. That talked about the importance of political will, national unity, the civilian aspect of this. So I'm going to start with Tamara first. How do you help sort of connect the dots that our freedom, our defense is secured by our support for freedom? How does that factor into how our nations are actually delivering on that right now? And so pick this up a little bit from your perspective, Tamara. Do we have what it takes to answer the call when our military commanders are saying the civilian fight is just as important?
Damon, thank you. And thanks to Peter and everyone who put together this fantastic series of conversations. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Look, yes, we have what it takes. This is a question of making the decisions to commit. And those decisions, yes, need to come from governments, but not only from governments. The secret sauce of democracy, and we all know this, especially those of us who have experience living in autocratic societies, but the secret sauce of democracy is that it has the capacity to correct its own mistakes, to innovate, to improve itself. And it does that through the daily decisions of citizens and policymakers and business people and civil society. It doesn't happen automatically. And when I think about the assault, Damon, that you mentioned in your opening remarks, the assault on democracy that we are facing globally, it is absolutely, as these two incredible military leaders said, a multidimensional assault. It's on the military front in Ukraine. It is on political and economic and information fronts. Russia is fighting its war through propaganda in Moldova. It is fighting its war through illegal gold mining in Africa. It is fighting its war through mercenaries elsewhere on the African continent. It is fighting its war through sanctions busting and corruption in capital cities and wealthy cities around the world in countries where we and our governments have close military, political, and economic ties. So I think the question we face is, are we prepared to fight this battle on all the fronts where the Russians are fighting it, where the Chinese are fighting it? And they're not doing this, I think, primarily out of ideological reasons, but just out of the quest for power and influence. The more they can undermine democracies, democratic societies, and the concept of democracy, the more room they have for their own influence in countries around the world. That is the fight they're fighting. So is that the fight we're fighting? Now, when it comes to do we have the means, we've heard a lot about F-35s over the last 3 days. I was director of foreign assistance in the Biden administration. My total foreign assistance budget was, I think, less than 3 F-35s. It does not take a lot of government funding to do this work. It takes consistency and commitment. And it takes partners. I think that what I've found most disheartening in our conversation over the last 3 days is the lack of confidence that I'm hearing from so many people when, number one, we have so much going for us, and number two, we can support each other so much better than we're doing. What I found really dismaying this year was not only that my own government chose to cut foreign assistance across the board in ways that were not only short-sighted, but the way they did it, very destructive, abandoning partners and friends around the world overnight. But that I saw other governments make the same choice. And I understand budget pressures. I've served in the government. But this stuff is, relatively speaking, cheap. So it's penny wise and pound foolish to cut support for civil society actors, to cut exchange programs, to cut off the number of university visas for students and graduate student researchers in the name of building up your own society. You're actually undermining the strength of your own democratic society and the partnerships that your members of your civil society are building with people around the world.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you. I want to bring this to you, Lesia, because Tamara said we have the confidence, we have the wherewithal to be able to, as democracies, to shape destiny. I think we have all had to watch as Ukrainians took this into their own hands to help shape their destiny by how they have responded to the Russian assault and invasion of your country in a way that has inspired us, has shown that there is capability beyond what many people even imagined in our societies, and yet today it still feels very far from how we teed up the conversation on Ukraine. And the conversation coming into this weekend was, is there still a pathway to end the war by winning the war? And that doesn't feel like the real conversation we're having about Ukraine outside of these halls right now. So Lesia, can we come to you as probably the most important voice in how to think about whether democracies can decide destiny, knowing that the outcome of Ukraine's struggle is going to be central to that question?
Thank you so much for having me here. There have been a lot of Ds on all the titles, but we spent so little time discussing the possible D-Day and planning for that. Because right you are, we are either doomed to a destiny living next to the enemies that improve their technologies as we speak, and we have to spend first 2, then 5, then, as Ukrainians do, 50% of their budget on security needs. But the truth is, democracies fail to meet security needs. If it comes to the war, tyrannies are much better prepared. This is the secret kept silent, but they are much better in allocating human and financial resources. They do not have to go to their voters to ask for support, because every elections in every country, democratic one, you would have a conversation, as Tamara mentioned, and as Giuseppe mentioned, is it security or social security? Do we invest in jets or we invest in new hospitals? So you have to allocate all this political will to make it happen, while tyrannies do not have this problem at all. Actually, ancient Greeks invented this notion of destiny. They believed that no matter how much human being tries, they're doomed. So the whole tragedy genre was about, people trying, acting, but in the end, they will all die in pain, and in vain. But then another book came. And it's okay on Sunday if I quote Bible, but the idea of a free will and the idea that you, as a person, can do something, and then you would be responsible for your own choices and your own decisions, and you can influence a lot in your life. This is something that each and every Ukrainian felt, not only when the war started. I participated in 2 revolutions, risking my own life and sometimes the life of my kids, on my own decision. No one forced me to. Many Ukrainians felt that every man, every woman, and even every child and teenager matters, yeah? We all can do something. We all can participate in our own victory, while, unfortunately, tyrannies can organize much bigger meat waves sending our way. So we are right now, for these 3 days in this forum, discussing the diplomatic options that Russians leaked on our tables. They didn't have even the dignity to put that on our tables, they just leaked it. So what's behind the focus is that Russians do have this nuclear blackmail. They can make this war nuclear even without using nuclear weapons. They keep civilians as hostages, and if they continue targeting our nuclear power plants, as they already done several times, it's just a matter of time when the radiation would be a huge factor of negotiation. So what can be done if you are negotiating with a terror state? You have to make sure you don't have hostages, because right now all Ukrainian civilians are hostages. And if there's a nuclear incident, Eastern European civilians would be hostages. So is there something that could be done better? We, as civilian experts, together with military experts, worked hard to make this strategy, the Sky Shield strategy for Ukraine as the security guarantee. Because if Russians are actually negotiating for real, they would be okay to start with a ceasefire and things like Sky Shield over the sky to make sure that no incident willingly or unwillingly breaks it. There are many things in those items of the peace plan, which is neither about the peace nor looks like a plan, for capping Ukrainian army, which is obviously the only army in Europe which stands between Russian-friendly intentions and European countries. There's also the capping of NATO expansion. And if you would ask why, the most obvious reason is that you wouldn't be able to help Ukrainians. But think deeper. It's because neither Russians nor Chinese want you to have Ukrainians as allies when there will be hostilities on your territory. Because yes, we are weaker as democracies because we have to find a common will to act. But the only thing we have stronger is that free people fight better. We have motivation, we have resourcefulness, and we know why. Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people in this room who would be proud to have Ukraine as an ally. So I'm going to bring in the audience on this issue of democracies deciding destinies. And what we've heard here is that governments have an important role to get things right. They can also get it wrong. A Munich, a Yalta, they can get it right, create a NATO, an EU. But as Leslie has reminded us, that it is governments that are responsive to their peoples. It's the action there, the agency then of our citizens that fundamentally can help reshape those decisions. And so right now, I think the issue as we look to close Halifax, can democracies decide destiny? Do we have the confidence to do it? Where are our people rallying around sort of this pathway? And it's in a moment where this will be decided in Ukraine today, Venezuela, other places around the world. Let's take in a few questions. Please stand up and identify yourself. We'll start with the Ukrainian colleague in the back and then come forward to the front row. Please identify yourself and direct the question, please.
Thank you. I'm Olena Tregub from Ukraine. My question is for the General and the Admiral. You spoke very important words about civilians, about awareness, the whole society defense. And you are the military leaders of Europe. And I'm very curious about what is your current feeling about where the Europeans are in total as population. We know Europe is moving in the right direction about recognizing the threats, about being more aware that society needs to be switched on. But at the same time, you, General, you come from a country, Ireland, where Ireland just elected a president who is worried about, as she says, militarization of Europe. And when it comes to Italy, I was just at a conference in Turin, and there were protests saying no NATO in Turin. I don't know why they don't want to have NATO in Turin, but you have groups who don't want NATO in Turin. So are you worried? Are you reassured? What is your sense right now? Because you as a military leaders, obviously, you are not fully, your advice and your understanding is a little bit far away from populations of many European countries. So I just wonder how you feel about it.
John Clancy.
Sure.
And I will-
Thank you, Elena, for this question. And I listened to you yesterday as well. And, my job and your points you make, and I don't really want to get into political debate about Ireland, because there's a lot of curiosity about Ireland, and the conflation between Ireland's stance on neutrality and its position on defence and security are too often conflated, and I don't want to do it in this environment either. But I think if you analyse the presidential election, for instance, our previous president was also very left, and that did not make any difference. So this is not about where Ireland sits. This is about, and I sit on a chair on behalf of the European Union member states. I was elected by my 26 colleagues under secret ballot because they felt and trusted in my ability to bridge the gap between the strategic military intent and the political intent of Europe at this point in time. And therefore, I think, to answer the second part of your question, Europe at the moment, and you're right, the member states are very purposefully catalyzed because of what's happened in Ukraine. And if I can be quite frank, probably, we have seen a decline, a complacency that has happened over 2 to 3 decades through a lack of investment, a lack of awareness, and it has taken this strategic shock that Ukraine has been to the continent of Europe, for Europe in a sense to recognize that violence and violence itself has now become an instrument of politics, not only in Europe, but right across the world. And that is why Europe, through its Preparedness Union strategy, through catalysing 800 billion of resources between now and 2030 to rearm Europe, that Europe, and through my chair and the consensus of the supports that are being given in military-wise, over 60 billion to date, which is nothing, by the way, but Europe still remains the most strongest supporter of Ukraine and what it has invested in Ukraine, by far, globally. And this is all of these things combined. Are we doing enough? No. And it's a very simple thing from my point of view, and I can be sure for you, I advocate very, very strongly on behalf of Ukraine. I spoke to General Syrskyi on Thursday. I had him at my EU CHODS meeting by VTC. I have visited him in Ukraine. That doesn't matter whether I'm Irish or German or Belgian. It doesn't influence what I do, because I am a European general. And I meet my destiny in terms of what I do and what my purpose is to do it for. And I can assure you on two simple directions of travel. Weaken Russia through what we can do as member states and what we can do as CHODS to weaken how they get their finances, their economic resources, and so on and so forth, and we can debate all of that. But most importantly is about their capability and sustaining it right now at the most challenging of times for Ukraine. And that is a significant focus of my work and will continue to do so. And it's about putting the meat on the bone. It's about mobilizing industry to ensure that we can spend, and that, as Lesia has said, the most competent and expertise military we have at this point in time in Europe is the Ukrainian armed forces, without a shadow of a doubt. As an example, in a workshop I had only a month ago, I had all of the Danish service chiefs come in And we had a very significant workshop to try and influence the roadmap that Europe was putting down. Why did I bring them in? Because they have built the lessons identified from Ukraine at this time. So industry, the military, society, Europe EAS, everybody is engaged not only to invest in Ukraine, but to learn from Ukraine and build coalitions and bilateral coalitions, multilateral coalitions, so that collectively we understand. And we're guided by the principle that the border of Europe is Ukraine. And Ukraine is as important to Europe as Europe is to Ukraine.
True.
Thank you, General. Did you want to add anything, Admiral, to Elena's
Step
question?
again, it burned it out. No, I'm just very quickly. First, going to, I mean, I was, when I was Italian, when I was young, the kind of mantra was Italy out of NATO. So now, no NATO in theory, we are getting better. But having said that, I mean, it's common. I mean, it's a common music we have been listening in all way through. I mean, there are, of course, parties or I mean, communities that are against NATO, against Western world. I mean, it's something that's an heritage from way behind us. But that's we cope with that. I think that from the Italian point of view, the messages are pretty stronger from our Prime Minister. So there is no doubt. As far as NATO, I mean, a lot of stuff again are said by Seán. But then my first trip as the chair of NATO Military Committee back in February was in Ukraine. And I was I was going over there because I went over there as a child, but I went there as not just by myself, but because 32 allies wanted that the first trip of the chair would be there, and we did it. And we will go again every single year. I will go again to show that NATO is a side strongly supporting Ukraine. We have been supporting Ukraine, and we will keep on doing that at the best of our capacity. So that's basically the message is really pretty clear. I mean, there is no any kind of flexion, no any change. Of course, as time goes by, you need to keep the fire burning, you know, because I mean that was happened at the very beginning. I mean, front pages, then all of a sudden, of course, that's natural. But it is our commitment as military to signify that. The problem is the one that we had at the very beginning, on the 24th of February 22. And we need to react, and we need to act, and we need to support the way we have been doing from the very beginning. And we are doing this. We are doing a lot, I think so.
Terrific. I've seen a lot of hands. We're going to come down to our Taiwanese colleague in the front row, please. Maybe we'll take two on this round, here and here. I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you as well, okay?
Well, thank you for the panel. My name is Ming Chang from Hello Taiwan. As Tamara has put it nicely, that the bad actors of the world, China and Russia, have been used disinformation, as President Trump will put it, fake news, to create more division in our society and skew the view about the war in Ukraine and about China. And they're very successful, and we have TikTok as a good example. And the United States have passed a law that to transfer TikTok, although we're still waiting for that to happen. And the Senator Keane had mentioned that disinformation starting with education of the youth. And TikTok, and primarily, is talking to the youth. And it is skewing our youth in terms of how they view our global society. And I'm very concerned that this tool, and some of the Americans call it a digital crack, is making our youngsters very addicted to this tool and really skew our mind about democracy and undermine our community. Is there a coordinated effort to help address this type of issue?
All right, we'll come back to digital crack. Let me take the second one here, and Tamara, you'll kick that one off.
Sure.
Andriy Shevchenko with the Ukrainian World Congress. And by the way, democracy building in Ukraine was an essential part of our resilience. So when we feel disappointed with what's happening around the world, think about that. My question is about this. When you, Damon, mentioned this assault on democracy, we should acknowledge that a big part of that assault is done with democracy tools that we have been cherishing for so long. Our enemies learned how to hijack our free speech concept. They learned how to use bubbles and algorithms of social media to spread the information they need and play with our minds. And they use technologies, innovations to persecute freedom fighters and change builders. So I see this as an intellectual challenge to us, because probably we need to reverse our thinking in a really radical way. And instead of promoting social media, we should probably lead the cause of regulating them. Instead of granting access to information, probably we should think how to limit that access to information. And instead of cognitive defense, we should finally switch to cognitive offense, maybe take off our white gloves and think how we can fight our enemies with cognitive tools better than they do against us. So my question is to you, both on the military side and on the civilian side, do you see signs of this change in thinking? Is it necessary? Any thoughts on that?
So related questions on the information challenge and free speech, they get into thorny issues in democracies. Tamara, why don't we start with you? Leslie, you can add a bit. And if our military commanders want to be brief on that point, we'll take it before we come to the next round tomorrow.
Yeah, so a couple of points, I think, on digital crack. One is that, as we all know, that's the business model, right? We live in this attention economy. It is integrated into so much of our daily lives. Our politicians in our democracies are also using that attention economy and its platforms to speak to us and us to speak to them. So it's already shaping the way we do democracy, and I would say it is leading us to do democracy in a way that is, yes, much too focused on our differences rather than what we share, but also too fast. Because democracies require people with different views to find a way forward together, and we can only do that through a dialogue and compromise, and that takes time. And digital crack does not create a platform for that, and it also gives us this sense of hurry, 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 and a sense of overwhelm, and that prevents us from having the dialogue and conversation we need to find way forward together. That's why platforms like this are important. This is a very elite platform. But when you get voters in a room to talk about digital crack and its impact on their kids, you get proposals very quickly. There are localities in European countries that have already agreed to ban cell phones from schools. There are localities in the United States and states that have decided to ban cell phones from schools for precisely this reason. So I think we, all of us, have to take responsibility for making the space, holding the space, to have those conversations citizen to citizen. That's one. But two, let's not get too down on the young people who are addicted to digital crack. We're all vulnerable to this. And young people in this world have also been empowered by digital tools, whether it was in the Arab Spring or more recently in Bangladesh and Nepal and Tanzania and Madagascar. And these fantastic 15 at 15 visitors who use digital tools to create those tremendous videos. So yes, Andre, we absolutely can go on offense. And maybe we should look to the 5 incredible kids behind you to start building a digital industry that helps us come together, helps us remember what our strengths are, and I think this is very important, helps us learn from each other how each of our societies is pushing back, how each of our societies is repairing what's not working in our democracies so that we can all get better faster.
Leslie, do you want to add a word? Free speech fundamental in Ukraine, or are you good to
Before the collapse of Soviet Union, they would use propaganda to make sure you would believe that the communist way of doing things is a better one. But since we figured out that democracies make better genes in movies, they switched to a concept of not making their way of doing things better, but you starting doubting your own democratic way of doing things. And social media is the best tool to spread this fear and disintegration into the society. Because to make changes, you have to elect not the most clickable and popular politicians, but the wisest people in the room, which is usually not the same. Because when I started my political career and I was first time in Washington, each congressman and woman had 3 staffers. 2 of them were dealing with developing policies, internal and foreign, and 1 of them was dealing with constituency. Guess what? Now, 3 staffers remain, but 1 of them goes to social media. So less brains to actually developing policies, while the world is much more complicated place than it used to be 2 decades ago. So my point is, Russians have invented, finally they've invented something not stolen, but they've invented the cheapest way to do war. It takes just 1 drone, $10,000 cost, to put down all Copenhagen airport. And they can do it daily. They've reversed the picture. Because in the Cold War, you were wise enough to drag them into the arm race. Right now, they did the same to you. They're trying to drag you in spending billions on the drone wall, not figuring out actually how to do that. And the only solution is you have to use non-military ways to stop money, which is the blood of their war machine, coming there. Then there's not a single technology or spare part they cannot steal from you or smuggle. But if they run out of money, they would have to stop. And this is something we can focus before big war comes to Europe. Because Ukraine keeps fighting, buying you time to do that. So please stop pretending those sanctions that you've already implied are actually sanctions. Those were the sanctions to help Ukraine. Right now, you have to start thinking sanctions to help yourself. So to stop financing security to that big extent, and sooner or later putting down Russia where it belongs, to a normal small size, like make Russia small again, in all concepts, and then we can do bright things together. Thank you.
So we're about to hit the witching hour. Let's bring the mic here, and we'll do these 2 back to back. I'm going to have you be quick, Lobsang, and right here as well. These are final questions. Be to the point, please.
I'll be very quick.
Introduce yourself.
Lobsang, Harvard Law School. 2 European officers support Ukraine. Admirable. I also went to Kyiv to show solidarity. 3 Shahid drones hit that night. I ate dinner with Ukrainians, and I slept in my hotel room. I didn't go to the bunker, show solidarity. But Europe is defending Ukraine in the name of democracy. When President of France, Macron, went to China, met with Xi Jinping, and he said, Taiwan is America's problem, not Europe's problem. So Europe is defending Ukraine in the name of democracy, but one of the big leaders, major leaders of Europe, is abandoning Taiwanese democracy because it's China. So I would appreciate if 2 of the officers would comment on Taiwan and China.
Can you pass the mic right here, please?
Hot questions.
Thank you very much. I'm Senator Rebecca Patterson from Ontario, Canada, and I want to actually talk to our 15 under 15. Tamara, you also talked about community resiliency, and at the heart of democracy are communities. It's the people, because without people there is no democracy. So how do we increase resiliency within our communities so that when we are being hammered by disinformation, maybe even drones, that we have a people who can continue to see optimism and moving forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to make it easy for our panelists by saying you only have 20 seconds anyways, so you can't be pinned down too badly on Taiwan.
Okay, thank you very much. Military subordinated to political, straight. That's a political question, and I think it deserves a political answer, and I can't give you that. The second thing is Taiwan. Transparency on digital information has built trust and confidence, has blunted disinformation, which is an offensive tool that has been used. And it's multifaceted. And answering your question, when you get to that about the youth, the multifaceted approach that comes from this overarching piece is deliberate, and it's what we have learned, that you have to be able to bring whole of society. The Nordics have done it, the Baltics, where the actual soldier is a defender of actually the state, but he's also a symbol of the unity that the state has. The Baltics, everyone in society has a role, and this is how it works. And this is where everyone here in this Youth 15 need to realize that you all have a role. Every single citizen, you all have to play your part in defending democracy and defining it for the future.
Thank you, General Clancy. Admiral, you
Very
get the
quick,
final word.
I buy everything what Seán just said, of course, but I'd like to answer to the ambassador on this defensive-offensive dilemma. I mean, offensive action are an option. I mean, we as military, we need to be able to provide to the political decision maker the options that they will choose. On the other side, let me make you an example that I care a lot, because I mean I'm using it a lot, very much. Speaking about this and thinking about drones, but let's make the example with the arrows. I mean, if they are shooting arrows at you, you have three options. You intercept the arrow, you destroy the arc, or you kill the archer. And NATO has all these three options available from now on. Then it must be decided, I mean, what is the course of action that they want to take. And then I will leave you with a question. Killing the archer is an offensive action or a preemptive defensive action? We are still thinking about this. I mean, we don't have a solution.
All right, we have hit the witching hour, but I want to close on the point that the Senator made. We're talking about democracies determining destiny. It is about people. And I think as we sometimes have this sense, as Tamara said, of doubt about whether we can muster the political will and unity for what's required at this moment in Ukraine, or for the challenges that we're facing, the power that we have is the power of freedom's advantage, is that people, it burns in their soul and your spirit to have a sense of dignity, protect your community, to worship as you please. And so we don't need to get locked into how many EU member states we have, how many NATO allies we have. If we go back to the fact that we're built on people, we can think about the billions of allies we have in this fight around the world. Billions of allies, many of them that are trapped and buried beneath tyrannies and dictatorships. And this is how we think about democracies determining destiny. We'll take the resolve of political leaders in elected political states, but it's also up to us to do what we can to support those who share our values, and everything is being done to muffle their voices. They are our allies. That is how unleashing the potential of people we will determine, democracies will determine destiny. You hit the nail on the head, Senator. Thank you very much. So thank you to our panelists. Let's invite Peter back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon, and thank you to this great panel. Thank you to all our moderators, all our speakers, all of our participants. You traveled a long way to be here. It's not easy, the easiest place in the world to get to, so thank you for being here. I want to thank my board, my team, our volunteers, and I want to thank my filmmaker, Steve Markle. Democracies don't despair. Democracies defend differences. Democracies discover dreamers, design doodads, deliver dollars. Democracies defeat dictators. Democracies demand decency. Democracies decide destiny. Have a safe trip home. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.